Welcome back to the JD Fix. I'm Heather Fenty, and today's episode is for anyone who's tired, just tired. Tired of leaning in, tired of pretending everything's fine, and ready to find a new rhythm. My guest is Kat Kibben, founder of 3 Ears Media, LinkedIn top voice, and author of the new book, The Bounce Back Factor. Kat's been leading, writing, and telling the truth about work for years. And this new book follows suit. It's about resilience, burnout, and what it really means to lead when everything around you feels uncertain. So, welcome to the JD Fix, Kat.
Thank you for having me, old friend.
Yeah, it's always fun to catch up. I know sometimes when we get on calls, we're like, what was this for again? We kind of go off on tangents. So I'll try to keep it, short and sweet today because I'm really interested in learning about your book and kind of what you want to tell people about it. So I have some questions for you, and we'll just kind of wing it if that sounds good.
Always. I fully trust you. We live in the realm of all things job expertise and a little bit
Right.
of life. It's exciting to be here to talk about the life side and the new book.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so when you think about the words burnout and reality, why do you think burnout feels different right now for people?
I think at its core, right now, burnout feels different because we are operating from a place of fear. Every headline is telling you the future is bleak, especially if you work in recruiting, right? They're talking about replacing recruiters and the future of work and the economic uncertainty. And I am not saying all politics, I'm not even referencing politics, but the current geopolitical climate is tense. I think we can all agree on that, no matter where you sit on any aisle. And the mixture of all of those things, the technological uncertainty, the reality of our worlds every day, the uncertainty around work, it's all building up into this burnout because what I learned and what I wrote about in the book is like when you're going through constant uncertainty, you have decision fatigue, right?
Hmm.
And decision fatigue is not the best place to make great, innovative future decisions for your life or at work.
Totally. Yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah, I mean, to me, every day you wake up and the world feels a little like chaos. AI, layoffs, politics, all the things. Do you think leaders are honest about their burnout and how do they lead in this kind of this climate right now?
Yeah, I think to answer your first question, absolutely not. They are not being honest because most people who are in leadership positions right now were brought up in the same world of work that I and you have experienced for the first half of our careers, where we were taught to be these autonomous machines, right? We were supposed, that's that we are the center, the beginning of hustle culture, right? We have all been told, and we were raised on these ideas and ideals that if we just worked hard enough, everything would turn out. And for millennials, especially, I think there's been a bit of a reality check that regardless of how hard we work, regardless of how many hours we put in, whether it's 80 or 38, we're not getting the rewards we thought we would get. We're not getting the certainty we want. And unfortunately, the consequence is a leadership environment where people, like I said, are operating from fear instead of really focusing on what they want.
Yeah, totally. I sometimes wake up and I'm like, "Oh, I really wish there was a pause button today so that I could do all the things that I need to be doing,
Yeah.
People are still expected to do their jobs and lead through all of this. And I feel like just overall things have shifted. So, as a leader, what you were working on or your job that you were doing 6 months ago or a year ago is different today. So what recommendation would you give to a leader or anyone who's trying to find their purpose in all the chaos?
Yeah, I love that question. I think the first thing is to admit to yourself and to everyone else that the world changed, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to give the whole pandemic speech. That was 5 years ago. I get it. World changed, people changed. But let's talk about some really current stats. In the last 5 years, 10 million people have experienced a layoff. Some of those people have experienced multiple layoffs. Right now, we have a caregiver crisis in this country. 1 in 5 people are caregiving for someone in their life, whether they're older or younger. And then let's really tie this up with a bow, because this is the number that makes me shake my head really hard and wonder how we never asked why something didn't need to change. Is 97% of people report they've worked in a toxic workplace.
Hmm.
97. Okay, that's everybody.
That's
Because
a
the other
lot.
3 people,
Yeah.
you're lying. You're lying or you work for
Yeah.
yourself. And
Right.
I mention all of those statistics because I think they add up to making a really strong case that what we've been doing isn't going to work anymore, because people inside, their emotions, their drive, their mental health has fundamentally changed. And the thing that I talk about with this book, the thing that I think every leader should be thinking about, is how you change in response to all of this, not how your team changes. Okay. Step one is self compassion, because if you don't like yourself, you cannot lead people.
Right. That makes total sense.
Well, and the
All right.
nature,
Yeah.
right, is that if you're stressed, if you're frustrated, if you're not acting within your values because you are operating from a place of fear, because you don't know how to navigate uncertainty, I don't expect you to be your best. I don't expect, and I understand not being nice to yourself. That's one of the big stories I tell when I talk about this book, and one of the things that I feel really vulnerable saying out loud is like, I wasn't being the best manager because I was not in a good place. I didn't know what I
Yeah.
wanted. I wasn't being nice to myself. And the consequence of that is like, I either beat myself up or I beat up every single person around me. And that's not my special vulnerability. That's human nature. And changing is a choice, but nothing changes if you don't change.
Right. Yeah. And people don't like change, but sometimes you have to really sit down and say, okay, we need to do this. Like it's going to be better for everybody. Right.
Yeah, if you want to build a
Yeah.
functional team, if you want to build a high performing team, if you want to be innovative, all those buzzwords we tell people not to put in their job
Yeah.
postings, right? But those are functions that we expect of teams without providing them the emotional stability where that is a resource they can access.
Yeah. Definitely. So I'm curious about, you said you just weren't in a good place. And is this why did you need to hit the road to find the clarity and to get that change and to create new momentum for yourself?
I love that. I think when I look back on it now, because hindsight is always 2020, I think I had to hit the road because I learn best in extreme situations. So, a little context about me. I wrote a whole chapter about this in the book because this is one of those self-reflection moments where you can't help but laugh at yourself, right? So, I the first time that I ever wanted to really connect with my body and get more healthy in my life, the average person maybe signs up for Weight Watchers, downloads an app, and maybe signs up for a 5K. I signed up for a Tough Mudder. And for those of you who aren't
Nice.
crazy, I'll provide you some context of why this is crazy. That is a between 10 and 15-mile race with between 15 and 25 obstacles that include getting electrocuted. Okay. Um, and for me, I needed something that felt so much bigger than me in order to achieve and make that part of my routine. I remember actually walking on a treadmill one night thinking, if I don't continue to train, I might die.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and that was like a real thought. And so when I thought about changing my life, I didn't know that I was learning how to navigate uncertainty. But I knew that if I stayed there asking myself the exact same questions about if I was a good enough leader, if I knew how to run my business, if I knew how to manage my life, I would just keep asking those questions and never really find the answers. I had to find something. And luckily, the inspiration came via a guest at brunch who was living in a van, traveling with their animals. And I was like, wait. Could I do that?
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like it always comes when you least expect it, for sure. And I haven't done a one of those Tough Mudders, but I have done a mud run, which I think it was a 5K, but there were still obstacles, and I did feel like I was going to die after. It was
They're
just like,
really
"Oh, let me
hard.
sign up for this." Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no
it's a
one
different
tells you
level.
like, okay, yeah, obstacles, air quote obstacles. So I'm thinking like
Yeah.
monkey bars and things that I can make optional in my life. No, no, no. This
Yeah.
is a tank of ice water that you have to go underwater to get to the other
Yeah.
side. Dunk your head in a tub of ice, okay?
Yeah.
Or there were no other options to get through the obstacles. You had to go through it. And I guess that's probably a good metaphor for all of life, right? Is like
Yeah.
we don't just get to run around the obstacles. I heard something yesterday that said resilience sucks while you're doing it. And I was like, oh. And it clicked even more because to me the bounce back factor is all the practice you do when you're not having to be resilient. It's what prepares
Right.
you for when uncertainty happens, not if, because we all know it's a when.
Yeah, totally. So, what do you think your hardest or biggest bounce back moment was in life so far? And did you write about it in the book?
No. So I would say in my life, the hardest bounce back moments are deeply personal and often relate back to my family. And I have kind of a rule. People know me for sharing highly vulnerable stories, but I will say that I do have boundaries. Thank you, therapy. That remind me that if I haven't figured it out yet, it's really okay to not share everything. Um, and so I think big picture, the big bounce back moments in my life, transparently, I think I'll always be working through those a little bit. And maybe I'll write some, New York Times bestseller about those big things once I figure them out. But in van life, I think it was realizing that all that pursuit, the little thing in your head that tells you that you have to do one more thing before you turn off the computer, that effort equals outcome, that frankly burned me out really bad and left me in a position where I found myself crying in a closet one morning before going to the gym. Yes, true story. That
Been there.
right,
Yeah.
because I thought I had to do the thing. And I think what I've realized, and the thing that I'll probably still be bouncing back from for a while, and something that I wrote about a lot in this book, is just realizing that this is not the that life is not a effort outcome equation. As much as everyone tells us that we have to put in the effort, and I do believe that, there's also a certain amount of self-care and rest that's required to apply the effort that means something, not just doing stuff to do stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a person that will, go, 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 go. And I have found, especially as I've gotten older and became a mom too, I find that I have to schedule rest for myself and time to regroup because I'm more productive and I'm just a better human overall at work when I'm, working with our team and, just in general. It's definitely a non-negotiable for me now where it used to be rest. What's that? I don't need that.
Exactly. Well, and my dream, right, is the future of work, which I phrase that I have to say half sarcastically every time I say it. It I think AI, we have this opportunity to have a machine that can take care of the busy work so that rest, balance, and true contribution become more valuable than just doing stuff.
Yeah, totally. Well, so I have one more question. If you had to give leaders or just people, anybody, one small thing that they could do today to get started to bounce back, what would that be?
Ask somebody for help. Stop
That's a good
banging
one.
your head against the wall. So when I write about asking for help, I write about when I drove, and to everyone who's shaking their head at me after I say this, I'm sorry. I drove from Colorado to Florida with the tire pressure light on in the van because I couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. Um, And I usually get at least 4 people shaking their head at me when I say that in real life, so that's why I had to preempt myself. But long story short, I had a nice big nail in my tire, and I learned very quickly, just 2 days into van life, that you have to ask for help if you don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Leadership, your life, all of it is not an autonomous activity. You actually need
Hmm.
other people. Community is what makes a life highly valuable and happy. And so if you're listening to this and you're looking for one thing to learn how to bounce back, would be just go and ask somebody for help with that thing that's nagging you in the middle of the night or first thing in the morning.
I love it. Yeah. Another thing that I'm not always great at, asking
You
for
know
help.
what?
But
That's cultural too.
it is. Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much, Kat, for coming on the show. I'll be sure to drop the link to your book and to your newsletter in the notes so everyone can follow along with all the cool stuff that you're doing. And I look forward to reading the book myself. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but it's on my list of to-dos, my long list on my desk, on my sticky note.
Well, in the end of this conversation, I'll get your address. I'll get you one.
Okay, thank you. And thanks everyone for listening to the JD Fix. Until next time, happy hiring.